If you've been playing Wuthering Waves recently and you realize that sometimes your dodges aren't working, your parries aren't connecting, or the systems in the game don't make any sense, congratulations buddy, you finally found the video that's going to explain to you how that works. My name is XgoSolo, but you may know me as the guy who navigates the open world with ADHD as his map and autism as his compass. And today, I'll be your substitute instructor for Ass Kicking 101. Now I understand there may be some concerns amongst the classmates, we are all new students here after all, but I do highly encourage you guys ignore the average gamer pull of blaming literally anything but your own ineptitude on why you're not succeeding in the video game. Because I don't care if schizophrenic Steve's sexually androgynous shadow demon moved your thumb off the joystick, because that's no excuse for poor performance. Today fellas, we're here to learn, and following in the footsteps of none other than Green Man Piccolo, the first lesson of today is how to dodge. I am willing to bet not just money, but my solitary copy of Lin Yang that a majority of your frustrations with its combat comes from your inability to dodge and or the button quote-unquote not working. And for the longest time I was the same way, because sometimes I feel like I perfectly quote-unquote got the timing down, but for some reason it just didn't really work. So now the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what's happening here? Why is it not working when I want it to? And that's really quite easy. In Wuthering Waves, a dodge is a basic action that takes place anytime you press the run button. Now rather that be because you're running from the enemy or alimony payments, doesn't really matter. If you press run, that's considered a dodge. By pressing this button, the game is automatically setting your character to exist within two states at the same time, the first of which being the run mode and the second of which being the dodge mode. And again, to preface this, both of these systems are overlapping with each other at the same time. Now what run mode does is quite obvious. It simply speeds up your character, but what we want to focus on right now is what I'm going to be referring to as dodge mode. Starting from the very first frame of your run animation and ending at frame 19 of 22, dodge mode is constantly active. And for those who want that as a percentage so they can better visualize it, that means 86% of your run animation is considered a dodge. During the 19 frames of dodge mode, the player is 100% immune to any and all oncoming forms of damage, and any projectile or attack that gets somewhere within the range of this dodge will activate what is known as the perfect dodge. Now I want you to all think about what I said just now. The attack doesn't have to be actively crossing over your model to activate the perfect dodge. It simply has to be close enough. This means, given the idea of speed being a relative thing, so long as the attack of the enemy gets close enough to your vicinity within those 19 windows, it will still trigger the dodge even if the initial button press did not. Now I know that's a lot of random words that you probably don't understand, but in conclusion, basically what it means is that you have even less of an excuse for failing to execute a dodge. Not only is the enemy coming at you actively increasing your chances of successfully dodging, but the dodge window lasts for over half a second. I mean hell, with rates like this, you could realistically dodge the IRS for a little bit. Emphasis on a little bit. Now everything I've explained thus far is just regular dodging, but what I haven't explained is something known as the perfect dodge. But what's the perfect dodge? I'm so glad you asked, voice in my head. The perfect dodge is a system that takes place whenever the player is successfully struck within their dodge window, and it's the very same feature that triggers the flash of light we see whenever we manage to avoid a hit. And if it wasn't already immediately obvious by the gameplay ramifications, a perfect dodge is far different from the regular dodge, which would also explain the time dilation, which I'm not going to explain to you because I don't really know how it works myself. And for those who don't know, the time dilation I'm referring to is how the game looks like it slows down for a second. What matters though is that a perfect dodge further increases your invincibility window up to 52 frames. That, combined with the regular dodge, gives players an effective 72 frames worth of invincibility when they manage to successfully pull off the dodge. Of course, perfect dodge works a little bit differently. Within the 52 frames, there are 3 actions that the player will be able to take. For starters, time dilation, or the slowdown of the environment, will immediately start on the 10th frame of a perfect dodge. On the 30th frame, however, the player will gain the ability to cancel it early by hitting the jump button. And on the 72nd frame, the window will finally conclude, and on the 73rd, the player will be able to launch a follow-up attack, while simultaneously giving full control back to their model. And everything that I've just said is the inner workings of only one dodge, but what I haven't explained is the caveat of why they sometimes don't seem to work. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a specific feature surrounding dodges that is often referred to as, and I'm quoting articles on this, the internal cooldown. Now this internal cooldown isn't like the final failsafe on your refrigerator or something, but rather it's a system that exists within the game to prevent something known as dodge spam. After all, the enemies in this game wouldn't really be much of a threat if you could just spam R1 and be immediately detached from any sense of danger. So you see here, friend, the internal cooldown works like this. There are two types of internal cooldowns, the aerial cooldowns and the grounded cooldowns. The grounded cooldown is the one that applies to the most amount of characters, so we'll start with that one first. Grounded characters are given 2 dashes at any given time, and even if both of them aren't consumed, they will still continue to recharge over time, meaning you can pretty reliably assume that at any given time you have 2 dodges on your character. In the event that you expend both charges, you will then lose the ability to dash from anywhere between 0.80 to 1.10 seconds. By extension of losing your ability to dash, this also means you can no longer dodge attacks. So if you've ever been fighting a boss and thought to yourself, wow, I definitely should have avoided that attack, that's probably because you panicked, consumed both your charges, and then when the actual attack started coming, you didn't have any left. And that's not a call-out post, by the way, that's a self-admission. Anyway, that's besides the point. What matters is that once the cooldown ticks down to 0, you will be granted 2 dash charges again, so that hopefully, this go around, you'll actually be able to avoid the giant monkey trying to hit you with a tree trunk or the sanest driver in California trying to hit you with his car. If you're thinking of trying to cheese the dash system by swapping characters, I hate to break it to you, but it doesn't work like that. There's one article that says it does, but through my own internal testing, I can confirm it does not. There is only one way to replenish a dodge in this game, and that is by executing a perfect dodge by being hit within the initial 19 frames that I mentioned earlier. Now, in the event that you successfully manage to do this, not only will your current dodge not be consumed, but any subsequent dodge chances you have previously burned will immediately be given back to you. And that, in essence, is how you go about doing a ground dodge, which is a far more complicated process than any of you likely thought it was. But what's even better is the good old aerial dodge. I'm gonna be honest with you all, aerial dodges don't really work that well, and 99% of characters are never going to be put in a position where they have to use an aerial dodge. However, once you get to hardcore endgame and realize that jump canceling specific animations is beneficial, and there's a pretty high probability you're gonna get slapped out of the air if you don't know how to dodge, it's kinda good to know. So let's talk about that air dodge, you know, for your sake. The best place to start is by saying air dodging isn't nearly as generous as its ground dodging counterpart. It seems as though an air dodge only lasts for 12 frames total, which would by extension mean the invincibility frames within are only 9 frames long. And this would actually line up with what closed beta 2 testers were saying about the air dodge window, specifically in reference to them claiming it was half the size of the ground dodge window. Now, much like its grounded counterpart, air dodging also has an internal cooldown on it, but the specifics of it is far less generous. While grounded, you had 2 dodges that replenished once a second, but when you're in the air, you only get 1 dodge and it is not coming back until you touch ground again.
Is the show over?
And the only way to circumvent that is by getting a successful air dodge first, which will immediately give you another, as you can see in the clip that I've been replaying multiple times here. I was literally fishing for this for like 5 minutes, by the way. That's why there's only one clip of it. And while I'm thinking about it, there's actually an active misconception with Lin Yang and his air dodge mechanics. True to what they said at the end of Closed Beta 2, Kuro Games actually went back and reworked the way Lin Yang's air dodge mechanics work. So now, when he's in the middle of his Forte circuit, he will be operating on ground dodge rules despite constantly being in the air. And while I'm not too sure about what the dodge window looks like on him, the fact of the matter is you will have as many charges as you need as long as you're up there. Additionally, successful dodges while in this state still grant you a bonus dodge. And that, my friends, is the inner working of the dodge, but don't click off just yet because I have a few more important things to tell you while you're here. For starters, it is 100% possible to both parry and dodge at the same time. By clashing with an enemy's attack and shortly thereafter pressing the dodge button, you will be able to do a parry dodge counter attack. The timing on this technique is very tight, and I've yet to be able to do it on purpose, but for those of you who want to practice this and make sure you have a bunch of DPS regardless of what you're doing, I recommend going to the crownless boss and giving it a try. He consistently throws out a bunch of attacks that grant parry windows, so he's like the training wheels for this technique. And that's it, that's all I got. So do me a favor and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Go and follow me on Twitch and catch my Wuthering Waves live stream. Share this video with a friend who has skill issue, and until next time, this is Solo signing off. Later, nerds.